Today, we are going to move on from that engaging, and to me it was vibrant, so thank you. Guys, sorry. We're going to move on to the topic of direct carrier billing in South Africa. Now, in South Africa, we have a very unique direct carrier billing landscape. We have a self-regulator, which is this year celebrating, its 20th year in existence, WASPA. And we have a very vibrant, engaged landscape of aggregators, mobile network operators, digital content providers, and ancillary providers like anti-fraud security solution providers. And all of them together have built this landscape of DCB digital content in South Africa. And today, I'm joined by these guys to discuss it. So I'm going to ask each of you to please introduce yourself for a moment. You're going to have to share the mics, so take one and let us know who you are and what you do.
Thanks, Anzelle. Dave Hudson, representing Content for Mobile Africa. So we provide digital content, premium brands across the continent.
Hello everybody, I'm Cilliers Niemann. I represent Digital Virgo, and we specialize in mobile payments and monetization solutions.
Good afternoon everybody, I'm James McNab, and today I'm representing as chairman of WASPA, the self-regulatory body here in South Africa.
Good afternoon everyone, I'm John Hoehler, I'm the head of digital content at MTN South Africa, focusing on gaming, sports, lifestyle, music, VAS, WASP, and a couple of other services. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Jacqui Jones. I am from Worldplay. We are a DCB provider within the South African region.
Thanks, guys. So firstly, I wanted to check, is the volume okay? I know you can hear me because probably Robben Island can hear me, but can you hear all the speakers? Okay, hundreds. So if you did, firstly, we're very, very well represented here in terms of the ecosystem today on this panel, which I think is just amazing. And thank you for all of you for agreeing to join us. We've got two content providers, an aggregator, and MNO, the regulator, and obviously MEF being an industry body, a member association. So for the purpose of today, we're going to look at the past 20 years of DCB in South Africa, with WASPA celebrating its 20th anniversary. But we're also going to look ahead a bit. And we're going to try and from that 25 years in total, so 20 years past, 5 years to come, try and take out a couple of key things that we can take into our day-to-day businesses actually going forward. So let's start with you, John, if you will. What role does DCB as a payment method actually play in this market, in the digital economy? So as a payment method, what's it unlocking and how important is it actually from your point of view as an MNO?
And everyone, thank you for the opportunity to be on, Anzelle, much appreciated. So if you look at what DCB airtime billing brings, it brings accessibility. You know, if you look at the size of the South African market, not just MTN's market share, but the market as a whole, you're probably sitting with close on 100 million SIM cards in operation in this market on a population of 65 million people, probably economically active 35 to 40 million people. We're a very mature market in relation to the rest of the African continent. Being 20 years where DCB has really been around, it's grown and evolved in this particular market. It creates an opportunity for engagement. So it creates another opportunity for a customer to transact, be able to subscribe, engage, and download services where maybe they wouldn't be able to due to other availability of not other payment methods. So for us, it remains an important channel. But we do acknowledge that as customer trends behavior evolves, it always creates new opportunities as well. And DCB sits alongside those. We've seen in other markets, obviously our focus on MTN South Africa, but we've obviously seen the growth of mobile money in East Africa, West Africa. Even in South Africa, we've actually got a pretty mature banking infrastructure and credit card infrastructure. Everything sits alongside. It creates a nice opportunity for customers to transact. Equally, we do believe that as services evolve, customer needs and behavior evolves, which means you start to look at new opportunities. So if you look at the broader digital economy, there is a trend, and we're doing it in our side, looking at e-verticals, for example, health, education, agriculture is where the area there's massive amounts of opportunity, and DCB allows for that to happen, especially when you start moving out of your urban areas into your peri-urban and rural areas to get reach. It creates a massive opportunity.
Well, I like that you mentioned to DCB being offered, alongside other payment methods, because I think that's a trend that we're seeing among digital content providers as well. And, as part of our work with the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, we obviously want to promote, and also me personally, want to promote DCB as a payment method, but it never needs to be promoted as the only payment method. In fact, I think it really comes into its own when it's offered alongside other payment methods. So thanks for that, John. So from a self-regulatory point of view, James, just to echo what John said in terms of the importance of DCB in the market and in the digital economy, how does WASPA actually underpin that role and that importance?
I think we have to go back 20 years as to why WASPA was formed.
Take us back.
Take us back, yes. Thanks. WASPA was formed because the networks required an organization to sit between the government regulator and what the networks wanted to protect the consumer in terms of being able to provide a basis for control. Let's put it that way. Hence, the Code of Conduct came out. Content was, the early noughties was probably a cowboy era in any market that went in, and you needed to put some rules and regulations in place to ensure that what was actually being offered and what the consumers were using was going to be, to all intents and purposes, regulated, but in a safe environment for allow users engagement and to give customer satisfaction. And over the 20 years that has evolved. I think if you look at the Code of Conduct that WASPA has, I think we're on version 17 point something now. We went through a massive overhaul of the code about 10 years ago, and it's currently going through an overhaul now. And the difference between a self-regulatory body and a government regulator is that, let's just use ICASA over here. They launched their own code in 2016, 2017, and that hasn't evolved, adapted, changed, or anything, but the conditions of the market have changed. Whereas if you look at WASPA's code, it has evolved around the changes in the market, the types of mechanisms, working closely with the network operators, bringing their business rules in, and ensuring that the consumers that utilize these content services or other such services are protected to the extent that they can use it in a trust environment.
If I may, I know this part wasn't scripted, but you referred to that major rewrite of the Code of Conduct, the WASPA Code of Conduct, which I believe indeed was 2013, and how the code's been updated over time to sort of keep with to keep up to date with changes in technology, whatever. I'm always extremely proud to refer to the fact that WASPA was the first self-regulator to make the use of anti-fraud solutions in the payment flow sort of a requirement for its members or for anyone active in the market. And I think it was a year or two later, the Dutch regulator looked at that and said, oh, well, down in South Africa, they're doing that. We should consider it. And you're seeing it more and more. So we often think, or I think sometimes we think, when we sat for the third hour in a row in our WASPA meeting, deliberating what goes into the Code of Conduct, what stays out, what's the definition of this word, of that like, what's the point? And did I study 4 years to be doing this on a Tuesday afternoon, whatever. But it actually does have a knock-on effect. And are we still doing that at WASPA? Are we still making sure, are we having these interactive meetings and making sure everyone has a say in what goes into the Code of Conduct?
Well, look, let's not forget, WASPA is a member organization. It could be perceived as a grudge purchase, but we're a member organization driven by our members. And it's a twofold idea. Number one, we've got to look after the consumer. That's what we're required to do. We've got to follow the rules that are set out by the networks, rules that are set out from legislation. But secondly, we all have businesses. I'm elected to the board, and the board put me in the position of chair, but I actually run a business in this market. And if we did not have those rules, would our businesses be operational? Would we have the confidence to grow our businesses and work with the networks and provide services to to the consumers, and every market's different. A lot of our members are international, so they don't just operate in South Africa. Networks themselves are international, to all intent and purposes, and each market's different. And the fact that WASPA can then lean on its members to understand what's going on in other markets and move quickly to ensure that consumers are protected and our businesses are protected is unique. Yeah. You don't get that in other markets per se.
Absolutely, and it's really about finding that balance at the Global Carrier Billing Summit, which was in Amsterdam in September. There were various conversations about exactly that thing, James, about finding that balance between protecting the consumer on the one hand, but stimulating or creating an environment in which sustainable business can flourish on the other. So one of these, like you said, many of WASPA's members are international. Cilliers Niemann is the South African account manager for one such digital content provider. We referred to the fact that the self-regulator creates sort of this environment in which the whole payment flow can be trusted, about protecting the consumer on one hand. But that's not solely the responsibility of the self-regulator, obviously, and of even the MNOs. It also lays with the CP, with the content provider. So yeah, what do CPs do, what do digital content providers do to ensure they find that balance between compliance and consumer protection and creating sustainable revenue streams?
Yeah, thanks, Anzelle. I think that...
Is that mic on, mic 2?
Hello.
There.
Thanks, Anzelle. Yeah, I think that it's indeed, as you say, it's not only the role of the regulator to keep a sustainable ecosystem going. All the players in the market, and especially digital content providers, need to ensure that they are having compliant operations locally. When we look at a typical DCB user journey, you can more or less split that into 3 stages, which is the pre-purchase, the purchase, and then the post-purchase stage. Now, each of these stages has got very specific requirements to them and need to be implemented on a content provider level. So, if we start with the pre-purchase journey, this is referring to the marketing material that the customer will be exposed to, and in this specific instance, there's quite a few regulations around, display of correct pricing information, T's and C's, and also what sort of content you can use on these marketing assets. Also important in this stage is the quality of the web traffic that you've used to acquire this customer. If you look at the purchase journey itself, this is typically, like you've mentioned, where content providers must partner with a trusted anti-fraud solutions provider to ensure that the customer is safe and secure during this flow of the journey. Thirdly is the post-purchase journey, and this is to do with how the content is delivered, when it's delivered, in what format the content is delivered to the customer. Also,
so
very
not via Simeon's messages, with links and.
So important in this stage is also the first-time user experience. You want to be sure that the customer, receives the content that he purchased, and also in the right format. So yeah, as you've asked, I mean, it's I think if CPs do regular audits on their campaigns. And they implement the right compliance mechanisms, I do think that it's possible to have a sustainable ecosystem and with growth.
Yeah, and I think I like that you referred to the 3 different stages, because really, and you referred to 20 years ago era. For the longest time, I think a focus from a CP, not to generalize, but from a CP perspective or a market perspective, was all the focus was on acquisition, acquiring consumer, CPA as low as possible, conversion rate as high as possible, boom. But these days, we're really seeing the need to move to a point of view where we're looking at the complete customer life cycle. We're looking at consumer retention. We're looking at engagement rates. John, I think more MNOs are looking at engagement rates. And I love that smile from ear to ear as a KPI. Absolutely. And it's important. We should. So, Jacqui, moving to the aggregator's point of view. I always love seeing you at world, other events in the world, at Mobile Congress, at World Telemedia in Marbella, because if I'm walking from point A to point B and I pass you, I hear you just like evangelizing the South African story, evangelizing the South African market, and telling potential new, content providers and service providers to this market what to expect when they're entering. What is that bit? What are the things that you're telling, especially non-local, obviously CPs, differentiate this market from other markets they might be looking at?
Okay, so I think the first thing I always say is there is no single aggregator for the entire African continent, and it's something that I stress is that if you are going into various African territories, is to partner with local partners. There is no one size fits all. We are all very different from each other, and it would be great if we were strong in each individual, if we were strong in all territories, but most of us aren't, and there certainly is no one size fits all. That's the first thing. The other thing when it comes to the South African market is some of the sort of European counterparts or American partners, they assume we sort of quite behind, and to explain, well, it's quite a mature market. Please don't send us your nonsense wallpapers or old HTML5 games, etc. We've been around for a long time, and there's that sense of naiveness, thinking that, okay, well, we can just put anything out there and it's going to work. So it's also to make that clear.
Yeah, thanks, Jacqui. So you referred to the rest of Africa, and I think that's a nice segue into David Hudson. So Dave is director for CFM Africa, obviously with a continental focus. That gives you visibility of other the DCB landscape in other African markets. How would you say South Africa compares to them with sort of specific reference to the fact that we have a WASPA and that we have a self-regulator? So if you compare that to markets where you're seeing the complete absence of something like that, how are we shaping up?
Well, thanks, Anzelle. So firstly, we are the market leaders when it comes to self-regulation on the continent. And I'm sure back 20 years ago, as James mentioned, in that cowboy era, it couldn't have been easy. I mean, for the partners to establish WASPA. But it's an education, I think, that is needed in the rest of the continent. And yeah, an example, recently I was approached by one of the operators to assist them with some clauses in their agreement. And for me, it's pretty easy to go and make reference to our code of conduct and to actually advise them on certain guidelines around advertising. So I think, yeah, we can be proud that we have this self-regulatory body, WASPA in South Africa. And yeah, for WASPA, I think it's something that we can assist possibly with other markets, to educate the other markets when it comes to self-regulating the industry in that market. And also all the role players, MNOs, gateways, and the CPs to collectively assist those particular markets.
Yeah, look, touching on what you mentioned about that educational type of role in terms of almost showing, be careful, this is what might happen, unless X, Y, and Z takes place. It's funny you mentioned, if I may take a moment to do a plug, we actually, as MEF, working on a similar thing currently in a market in Southeast Asia and Indonesia. And again, it's poised me to use the South African example, where we're hosting a roundtable with MNOs, CPs, other sort of key stakeholders, the Indonesian regulator, that's in January. And we doing exactly that, an educational bit, showing this was the situation in South Africa, this is what it used to be, the self-regulator was established, this is what it's doing, the MNOs, introduced anti-fraud solutions, whatever, and then show, you could look to this as an example of how to secure your market, because they're in that sort of pre-cowboy phase, not to overuse that cowboy term, but thanks for that, Dave. So I think that gives us a picture of like the past 20 years up until now. Let's start looking ahead. I know you and your team, John, are doing a lot in terms of just off the back of the discussions that we've had over the past couple of years. You know, it's always been one of looking forward, what's next, what's the next big thing. Very innovation sort of focused, I know, over at the Yellow House. What's in us for the what's in it for us all for the next 5 years, and what are you excited about?
So 5 years is a long time, and if you had to take a crystal ball and see where the market is going, I think our focus now in particular, and I see this with other operators even in our market, is quality over quantity. I think gone are the days of just let's have 100 million services. Let's find the right type of value propositions that actually inspire someone to make a purchase decision because they actively want to. You know, they're making a conscious that they're going to be delivered with value that they're going to consume. Now, that's not an easy task. I don't necessarily think, CPA aside, there's an acquisition problem in South Africa. We need to be driving retention, win back, and usage and engagement. I know ourselves, we're doing this. I know other operators in our market are now actively focused on this. I think that is the insights we as telcos, we can't sit back waiting for it to come to us. We also have to come to the party. So we're seeing ourselves being a little bit more proactive in engaging with our partners to understand that and drive it forward. We can't sit with a stick and say, we're not getting great usage on the surface. You guys make a plan. I think it's both sides of the fence. So that's one item. The second is, as MTN, we believe in the benefits of a modern connected life for our customers. And digital services or digital lifestyle is an important component to that. We ourselves find we are now integrated into our consumer division within MTN. We are no longer those people in the corner. We're now integrated because we've seen, for example, we've got our deal with Disney Plus, okay, as an example. If we're integrating into the core business, driving the core product, we know that when, for example, a Disney customer picks up Disney Plus through us, their usage goes up 4 times, their revenue goes up 2 times. That's core back to the business. When, for us, that is critically important. As soon as we're contributing back into the core business, the relevance of digital services in the industry we're in becomes a lot more prominent. So for us, the next 5 years is about how do we create value propositions that connect there. Connect to the customer, that they are consuming our services, but consuming the core product as telcos we offer to our customers.
And then I suppose it's not coincidence, or the timing is perfect, that you guys recently launched your marketing solution, right? Because it also helps you drive the type of consumer to that.
So it's very interesting. And again, you know, we live in a data-driven world now. I think as content providers, we sit with amazing insights that we need to share, but as telcos, we do the same. So being able to use that telco data amplified with the marketing reach and distribution that we have, it creates an opportunity for our content providers to engage. At the end of the day, we still need to deliver value to our customers. That will come through in products that they actually want to consume. So in 5 years' time, again, we do see the growth of e-commerce, health, education, agriculture, supported by your entertainment services, your video, your gaming. We see the traffic on our network. We can see that it's there. It's how do we join those dots with the right partners to be able to drive that.
Awesome, thanks, John. And James, similar question, but then from a WASPA point of view, like WASPA has managed to remain, evolve alongside the industry over the course of the past 20 years. How are we WASPA, as a self-regulator, going to ensure that we remain evolving alongside these innovations to come and this mindset to come that John just referred to, because it really is more than a mindset than an actual technological innovation.
How are we going to evolve? Well, it's twofold. There's 2 ways. Well, it's twofold, and there's 2 ways of looking at it. Are we just a self-regulator, or are we a kind of trade body? I think we're a little bit of both. We have to work with our members on what is key criteria for growing the industry, and then work with other stakeholders, such as the network operators, to deliver on those KPIs. Then, from a regulatory perspective, is to ensure that what an MTN or a Vodacom or a Cell C or a Telcom are doing is that we're monitoring what's going on in the market and feeding reports back into the networks. The networks, at their own cost, are taking on board anti-fraud, media monitoring companies, etc. But WASPA has a wealth of information sitting there. So, let's look at September statistics. There was 51,000 identifiable services that was picked up on our automated tools.
This is an actual statistic you're
This is
quoting.
an actual statistic that came out of the board meeting the other day. So there's 51,000+ identifiable tools, identifiable services in the marketplace across all networks, just on DCB. Then you take that down, let's say, let's use the term problematic services. It's not problematic, but it's where it falls into a category of not being quite right. Every network has a business rule. Then there is a process that WASPA has to follow in ensuring that those business rules are adhered to in the way that the stakeholder wants it, be it an MTN, a Vodacom. And everybody has a different set of rules, so there's a different set of criteria.
Is it too fractured currently?
Pardon?
Sorry, is it too fractured currently? Or is it still manageable even though everyone has a different set of rules? Sorry, bonus question.
It depends how you want me to answer that.
There's no right or wrong.
There isn't
like
a
from
right
your
or
heart. That's
look,
how I
From a baseband perspective, it could be too fractured and it will pan itself out over time. The fact that the networks are engaging with WASPA and engaging with the industry for probably the first time in a long time properly is allowing the market to change. And as John's already mentioned, they're siphoning off services. If the service isn't what a consumer wants, it might not be what the network wants, so they're getting rid of it. We've seen this time and time again in other markets. The UK did it years ago, where there was, 20 years ago, there was probably 10 aggregators, now there's 2. And, content providers, there were hundreds, now there's 5. So on and so forth. Yeah. It's not about the biggest will survive, it's who's got the right product. Is the product right? What's the evolution plan of the CP to that? From a WASPA perspective, we're putting in more automated tools to ensure that we're limited on staff, but we have to put automated tools in to be able to answer the questions from a Vodacom, an MTN, or a Cell C, and to ensure that those customers, because MTN have their TCF policy, Vodacom have their brand, Cell C, Telcom likewise. They're protecting their customers, and what the content providers are offering has to be right to their customers and has to be done in a manner that is acceptable and in line with what the network wants, not what. It's not about being murky. If you have to put your customer service name on it, it can't be grayed out. It has to be clear, precise, and okay. So the automated tools that are going to be deployed by WASPA in the coming months will pick up those areas not to penalise our members, but to ensure that our members are following the rule book for the networks. And this is exactly what the networks want us to, as a regulator, to deliver. And it's small baby steps, but we're getting there, and that's the only way we're going to be relevant, by having the engagement with the operators where it's improving, having the engagement with the anti-fraud companies and the media monitoring companies to ensure that it's right, and bringing learnings from other markets in.
Remain engaged, keep the conversation going. Thank you. Jacqui, looking at the past 20 years, what was the thing that really, if you had to point back one thing the past 20 years where you woke up, you checked your phone, and you got an email or whatever, or you knew that this thing has taken place, and you thought, this has been a shift in the market dynamics. This was...
Okay. That's quite a difficult one. But I would say there's not a single thing, and it sort of all feeds into one another. But I suppose it started with the introduction of the smartphone. And then we had sort of voice over IP platforms, which meant all of a sudden people were topping up with less airtime. Now we have to be smart, and okay, let's move on to micro-billing, because we have to optimize billing all of a sudden. Time goes on, and we have OTT services, big brands using digital platforms for acquiring users and making it really difficult for sort of the DCB space to compete and outbid those companies. And so all of a sudden now you have to be smart with how you're acquiring users. What other channels are there to acquire users? And sort of that brings us to today, which I think is, how do we piggyback off of existing infrastructures in order to acquire users. And I think, you know, for now, the next sort of buzzword is how do we do that? And a way we can do that is through bundling, which is what the networks are doing. So I think, you know, it all sort of feeds into one another, and it forces us to sort of move on, be bright, optimize, and think of ways to ensure the longevity of it.
Awesome, thank you. So not an entirely different question to Dave and Cilliers. Looking ahead, so looking back from a content point of view, what was the game changer from your respective points of views, and what is going to be the game changer to come? So in the short term, what's going to be the thing that perhaps can be said alongside or in the same breath as things like bundling or as things like the importance of partnerships that John pointed out from a content provider point of view? Dave, then Cilliers.
Yeah, thanks. I think bring back wallpapers. It's a joke. It's a joke. Yeah.
Oh,
No, I think definitely John touched on it. I think we need to bring premium brands to the consumer through the mobile network operators and to drive engagement. And that's pretty much what I see going forward, bringing those premium brands to increase engagement.
Okay, clear. So yeah?
Yeah, Anzelle, I need to mention that at this stage we do see a big need from customers to have access to high quality premium content, but also, you know, there's a huge request for local content, which is quite important for us at this stage. You know, looking at the future of where things are moving, you know, we're quite excited and we're quite prepared for users to be able to enjoy a second screen experience, you know. So this is where customers can enjoy the content on multiple devices and multiple platforms. And this also brings forth the new opportunities to engage with customers and to drive engagement on a specific platform, and also creates an opportunity for monetization on that.
I suppose South Africa, with its 11 official languages and stuff, like localization is obviously important for you in this market, right, as well. Okay. I can't thank you all enough for today's conversation. Like, it's really close to my heart, and I'm really happy that we had it. That having been said, we have, is it counting up or down? Well, it's still green, so it probably means, oh, okay, thank you. I was like, is that how much we're over? Or does anyone have any question for any other of our panelists? You can raise your hand if you do. Compliments are also welcome. Anyone just want? Okay. That having been said, thank you all very much, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the day's panels. Thank you.